How we respond to that is critical. And this response so far, this colorblind response, this post-racial response that says, oh, let's not name that elephant. Let's not call out what it is we're seeing. Let's redefine it, right, is an extraordinarily dangerous gamble. And we see it at every turn. So when former President Carter made the point that some of that overt resentment was about race, the president and all of his advisors rushed to dismiss that, even as obvious as it was that Carter was speaking the truth. They all said, oh, I'm sure that's not it. I'm sure they're just anxious about the economy. That's not credible. And for a president to say that and for his handlers to say that, I'm anxious about the economy. Everyone in here is probably anxious about the economy. But I've never, as a result of my economic anxiety, felt the need to go get a sign with a picture of a president dressed in an African witch doctor costume with a bone through his nose and go to a rally as a way to try to find a job. Like, I'm unemployed and I'm upset and this is all I could think of. What? Right? It's not about that. It's about something else. And the fact that the president has to second guess he's the most powerful man in the world, arguably, but he can't even name what is obvious. He can't even call it out for what it is. You can't criticize an act of racial profiling by the Cambridge Police Department without being attacked. When Henry Louis Gates got stopped by that officer for trying to break into his own house, and the officer wanted to know, do you live here? He lived there for 8 years. But the neighbor who first saw him and thought he was breaking in didn't recognize him. This man is 57 years old, walks with a cane. He is not the typical profile of a burglar. Right? But the cop comes in, challenges Henry Louis Gates. Gates gets angry at the cop, as you would too if someone accused you of breaking into your own house. So he gets a little mouthy with the cop. The cop doesn't like that. Arrest him for disorderly conduct. Now, here's the trick. In the state of Massachusetts, talking back to a cop, even yelling at a cop, is not, in fact, disorderly conduct. Not a smart idea. I don't recommend it. But it is not illegal. So when they arrested the man for a crime that he didn't commit, they made a horrible and egregious error, which was corrected when the charges were dropped. But the next day when they asked the president about it, and he said, if you recall, I think the Cambridge police acted stupidly, all hell broke loose, and people started attacking him all over the country. And Rush Limbaugh said, this is a black president trying to destroy a white police officer. Once again, pushing buttons of racial resentment, when in fact, what the president said, even if you don't think it's very presidential to say stupid, maybe that's a little juvenile, a little beneath the dignity of a president, but it was accurate. Because what do you call a cop that arrests you for a crime you didn't commit? Well, stupid. Before you get the badge, Mr. Lawman, and before you get the gun, you might want to read the law and familiarize yourself with the law that you're sworn to uphold. But the president said it, and then he learned from that, that I can't talk about race, even though I'm the president of the United States. If you want to know just how not post-racial we are, that's all you need to know. Because if we were post-racial, he could say anything he wanted. Nobody could do anything to him. But we aren't, and so he can't. And so we keep dodging it. Now, it's one thing for him to dodge it. It's quite another for us to do it. He's got to play whatever game he feels he needs to play, I suppose. But that doesn't mean we have to play that game. And the fact that we're getting sucked into that post-racial logic, too. We're saying things like, well, we can't talk about this. We have to maintain the optimism that people felt after the election. And if you talk about racism, it'll throw a wet blanket on that. All these kids who were all invigorated, and particularly kids of color and parents of color and understandably, look, I get that. I understand that. I don't have to be a person of color to know that that was real. But the danger in therefore deciding we're not going to talk about this systemic injustice anymore because we got to protect him, the president, and if we talk about it, there'll be backlash against him. Ultimately, we have to make a decision. Is fighting racism about protecting one person of color? Is about protecting 85 million people of color? We had 85 million people of color in this country who are not the president of the United States.